Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri, 1908 at the moment, letter series. Usually it's a diary series, but we're doing a series of letters that Dmitri wrote to his sister in 1908 and that she clearly saved because they still exist. They are in the private family archive on the island of Mainau, where she died. It belonged to her son. All right, so our recap. Last time we did the first half of the letter that we're going to finish up today. It was written on the 22nd of November. Dmitri hadn't heard from his sister for 4 weeks. He was a little annoyed at that. He had written to her 4 weeks ago and hadn't received a reply. And he had a couple of requests for her. So one was that she contribute the full 80 rubles that had been requested by one of her former serving people who wanted the money to pay for his son's education. I don't know where that 80 rubles was going to go specifically, but Dmitri was willing to pay 40. He did not want to pay the whole 80, though maybe he had to. He suggested that Maria pay at least 40, if not the whole 80. And the other thing worth noting is that I messed up yesterday when I said that this letter was written from Tsarskaya Selo. I don't know why I said that. I guess I got letters mixed up because it's clearly written from Petersburg. He was at that time living in Grand Duke Paul's palace temporarily. His apartment there had been fixed up for him with Ella's house, with Ella's help, and yeah, he was Grand Duke Aleksei Aleksandrovich had died. Dmitri had the original plan was for Dmitri to live at his palace, but because of Alexei's death, Paul had been allowed to return temporarily to Russia to attend the funeral, and that is what we're talking about today. All right, here we go. You can't imagine how empty it's become in our old house after Papa's departure. The downstairs rooms are closed. Everything has been packed away again. It's cold there again, and there's a feeling of loneliness again. Naturally, we went to see Papa off. There weren't a lot of people there, only those closest to him. It was very touching. After that damned send-off, I had a rather bad feeling, which can be summed up in a word, a funeral feeling. We arrived home. The main entrance was already closed, etc., etc., etc. Our daily life is entirely peaceful. Right now, I'm sitting at home because we're in mourning for Uncle Alexei, and I can't go to the theater for 40 days. A few days ago, I went to the officer school for the first time. It was great. First, there was dressage with a very young horse under the guidance of the very famous Felis. Now he's pretty old, and his Russian is terrible and very funny. He's an Englishman, that is, an American, but he's terribly nice overall. And my formation instruction is with Major General Nimitz. He's on the permanent staff of the officers' school. Well, and now I hug Vilgashka and you. Of you, we will soon be able to say good Maria, round Maria, and then in parentheses, he puts an illegible word and the word indecent. Sign off, your Dmitri. P.S. Don't forget to answer about Vlasov and to send a page from your calendar. So Vlasov was the man who needed the 80 rubles for his son's education. Okay, so loneliness. I think if I was going to single out something that was what is the word I'm looking for? The main thing that Dmitri struggled with, I would say loneliness. Not trauma. There was plenty of trauma from what happened, beginning with Paul's leaving Dmitri and Maria to go live in France with a new family, and then the the violent death of Grand Duke Sergei, and then just the fact that they were kind of shuttled from house to house. And yeah, and then what happened obviously with the Rasputin assassination and the revolution, plenty of trauma. But that wasn't sort of the main. If we want to look at sort of what was the underlying Dmitri, I think loneliness. He was given depression, I think clinical depression at times, but the underlying issue was, I think, definitely loneliness. Even in 1915, in those diary entries that we went through, he's kind of not as hugely social as you would think. He would go out with friends, but the majority of the time he was alone, and he would go to the club in order to just sort of be there around people. He didn't like to be at home alone. And going back again to his adolescence, he was sometimes really uncomfortable around other kids his own age, and he was shy, and I think he continued to be shy. Coco Chanel claimed that he was shy. And so, yeah, I think, I don't think he and Maria ever blamed their father for what happened in 1902, for him leaving them. They seem to have always had great affection for him. He seems to have been a good father, a loving and conscientious father, although also, a little bit remote, not surprisingly, even before he left and lived with his new family in France. He only saw them, I think Maria says in her memoirs, he only saw them reliably once a day. But anyway, they loved him very much. And so his departure is hard on Dmitri in this instance, and leaves him feeling lonely. And the whole palace has that kind of feel to it, obviously, because everything's now being put away. So I mentioned in a previous video that I myself every year spend a few months in an empty hotel in the Swiss Alps. And it's just me. And, the furniture is put away for the most part. In the Grand Salon, for instance, there's maybe one piece of furniture left out for my use, but a lot of times everything else is covered or stowed somewhere else. And I don't mind that at all, but for me it's only, I don't know. I'm not a teenage boy. I'm not a 17-year-old. And so he comes home, and he notes to Maria that the main entrance had been closed up, that the ground floor, or at least he says the downstairs rooms, are closed. Everything's been packed away, he says. It's cold. They're not heating it. So no wonder he feels lonely. They're not keeping everything. They're not keeping everything open and ready for his use. His stay there is pretty temporary, I think. He ultimately will end up staying in the palace that he inherited from Sergei, the Belozerski Palace, when he's able to be on his own, when he's no longer a minor. That's where he will live. But for the time being, he's living in this palace that's mostly shut up, except for his apartment. Obviously, when he says we, he's talking about the Lamings, who would also have had an apartment wherever he lived. They lived. General Laming, his wife, and their son, who was about 7 years younger than Dmitri. Anyway, okay. So Alexei has died of pneumonia in Paris, and obviously his body was brought back to Russia, and there was an Orthodox funeral there. So Dmitri was officially in mourning and could not go to the theater. And going to the theater was really, aside from gambling, absolutely his favorite thing. And he's not complaining about it in this instance. Although later in 1919, when he got news of Paul's death, he was living in London at the time, and at that time he would continue to go to the theater, and he was very much criticized for that. But he wrote in his diaries that it was the only thing that was allowing him to sort of, not be dwelling constantly on these horrible thoughts of his father's death and what it had been like for his father and that sort of thing. He was going to the theater basically for survival, and I think that's quite understandable. You know, he was alone. He didn't have Laming with him. So going to the theater was how he was coping. But in this instance, that wasn't an option. Even if he had wanted to, it wasn't an option, and it doesn't sound like he was complaining about that. So the next big development is that he has this enrollment. He will be entering for the first time in his life. He will be going to a school. Obviously, he had an education at home with tutors and with Laming, but this is the first time he's actually been enrolled in a school. So that's interesting. He refers to it as the officer school. It was actually the Nicholas Cavalry School, and it was not for officers. It was for people like young men like Dmitri, starting out as teenagers who were not officers yet, but when they finished the school, they would be qualified then to be officers. They would get their officer's rank. They would start out with the rank of cornet, which is a cavalry rank, and it would be like ensign. The military schools in Russia were reformed in the 1860s by Dmitri's great grandfather, Grand Duke Sergei Nikolaevich. Brilliant man and a great reformer, and he put the military schools on an excellent footing. And so you have two different words. You have the word училище, which is a school. So this is in Russian, the Nikolaevskaya училище, the cavalry school, the Nicholas school. And you had academies like the General Staff Academy that were for men who were already officers. So you could go as a teenager, not yet officer, to the engineering school, to the military engineering school, the military artillery school, the cavalry school. I don't know what all they had. And then when you graduated, you would get your first officer's rank or slightly sub-officer's rank. And then if you were already in the service and you were clever enough and wanted to go into one of the specialty branches, you could take an exam and go to one of the academies, the General Staff Academy being the most famous, and that's absolutely where Dmitri should have ended up, as I think he realized later. But anyway, he was starting at the cavalry school. Now the question is that I can't answer: did he ever attend group lessons there, whether in a classroom or in the manege with the horses? And that I don't know. You know, what he's talking about now, his first couple of lessons before he started in earnest, are as an individual. So he has this dressage lesson on a very young horse, not his horse. And the instructor is this very famous Felis. The name in Cyrillic letters is Felis, and Dmitri was probably just spelling it the way it sounded to him, so God knows what it actually looked like in English. Felis, I don't know. Doesn't sound like any name I'm familiar with, but very famous. He probably not famous outside of the school, but the students of the school, this guy is obviously quite idiosyncratic and probably beloved. Dmitri informs us, of course, that he's very old now. Dmitri being Dmitri, that could mean he's in his 40s, but probably older than that. He speaks horrible Russian, Dmitri tells us, and even though he's apparently been there for years, and he is an American. Kind of funny the way Dmitri says he's an Englishman, comma, that is an American. Kind of lumping them together, but he's terribly nice. All right. Now, who next? We have this Major General Nimitz, and that is, it's kind of funny. It's the Russian word for German. He's a German, on Nimitz. So, you know, obviously someone of either of German descent or a Russian who, for some reason, ancestor was called the German. He's on the permanent staff, Dmitri tells us. Tricky to translate what's going on here. My formation instruction. I don't know cavalry terms very well, but you know what he seems to be referring to is formation, as in when the troops form up. And it seems like it would be hard to do that just as an individual without other people present to be part of the formation. But anyway, I mean, maybe there were other people. Dmitri doesn't mention it. So yeah, I can't tell you if he was going to classes with other students or not. But we'll certainly be hearing more about the school, because actually I should say he hasn't officially enrolled in the school yet. I mean, it's confirmed that he will be going, but this is the first time he's been there, and he won't actually start the program, I think, until 1909. This is already pretty late in the year. Okay, so Vilgashka, I hug Vilgashka, and you know who Vilgashka is. It's Maria's husband. And then this little line at the end, good Maria, round Maria. You will soon be good Maria, round Maria. So in Russian, that is Хорошая Maria, Толстая Maria. I probably said that badly. And then he puts something in parentheses about indecency. And, you know, pregnancy was kind of, it wasn't indecent, but talking about it, you know, using the word was indecent. We've already talked about that. So he's saying, yeah, sis, pretty soon you're going to be fat. You're going to be round. Yeah, they teased each other that way, as you know. I tried to find out if this line was specifically from a known song or poem, and apparently it wasn't. The best guess of the AI is that it came from one of these children's counting rhymes, like, you know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or something that girls jump rope to, that sort of thing, a chanting kind of thing. So, yeah, and Dmitri underlined Tolstaya Maria, Хорошая Maria, Tolstaya Maria. He underlined that last part, round Maria. All right, then just a quick reminder from him not to forget the things he asked her to attend to. And now I've been yakking for about 20 minutes, so I'll say goodbye. What do we have next time? Well, a Christmas letter. So the last of the 1908 letters, I think, we'll have to check and see if I skipped any, but it may be that we'll go forward to the 1909 letters then. I won't be posting, it's Friday now, I won't be posting on Saturday and Sunday, but anyway, on Monday we'll definitely be doing the Christmas letter that he writes to Maria with a description of the gifts he's sending her, so good stuff. All right, I'll see you then, bye.